Hello, everyone. Welcome to yet another design review meeting about Tabular. Hopefully nearing the end of the ones that we're doing for this upcoming version. Okay, what do we got today?
Okay, so we thought a bit about the design for missing handling has been basically handled last time and closed, and we are all happy with that. Now, anomalous data is slightly more problematic, and we attempted the implementation, and that with the ideas we had last time, and that is highlighting like a few things that are unsolved. So I'm trying to be quick here. I put a summary of the current syntax of find anomalies, which is our current function to find anomalies, and ideas to extend the design. So,
okay,
yeah, I mean, current version, data property, or you can put a function.
So function
in the first
right
argument.
now is primarily anomaly detector.
Exactly. I put that below,
but
like a low distribution of
putting
anomaly detection.
a naked thing here.
Exactly. So we are. I all these examples are let's play with the design and see what can go wrong basically. So simple function, not very problematic. Like let's start with a univariate case where let's say we apply the detection on a tabular column, on a single column. That's quite easy. So one limitation of this design is that the function ideally is mapped, which is fine for a lot of simple predicates, like I want this value to be non-negative or stuff like that. But it has the limitation that you cannot do stuff that requires the whole column, usual thing. Now we have column-wise value though, so we could work around that, supporting column-wise value here. Yeah, so what I have here in the example below, hash greater than column-wise.
Right. I mean, that's if you really want to put it all into that one function. I mean, you could also compute the mean and then do find anomalies relative to that.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm just looking at design limitation and how to circumvent that.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is not super problematic. So name methods also fine. Like z-score or med or integral time range, all stuff that can be easily applied on a single column. And this also works fine in transform column. Here I'm adding a weird column, which is using column-wise thread, and basically giving true false column, a Boolean column using z-score, for example, on the column A. So this kind of works together in a sense. Now,
anomaly Boolean list is an existing property for.
It is. It returns a list of booleans, and this will be threaded across the whole column. Now, multivariate case is a bit more problematic. So, for the pure function case, again, easy to do if
Giulio,
if you have a function. Yes.
I just want to say one thing. There's one problem is the fact that most of the third arguments of find anomalies, on the other hand, do not return something that can be threaded back, because it's either just the anomalies or just the non-anomalous values. So in that respect, you can get things that are difficult to play with.
Yeah, you can. It's a bit unfortunate that the default case here is not the mask, but is the list of anomalies. So you always have to force to get the mask out, or this Boolean list or something like that.
Well, maybe we should have a function, a separate function that gives the mask, which is the primary thing used for Tabular.
Maybe. Or maybe the rather than the mask, the useful thing for Tabular is, but we will get there with transform anomalies.
I mean, to say find anomaly positions or something. Find anomaly positions or.
That's going to be a list of positions, though.
The mask is not necessarily the most useful thing. The most useful thing is keep the data that is non-anomalous and put missings instead of anomalous, or trim or clip.
Yeah, I mean, those things, we have another function which is transform anomalies that can take care of, in place modifying the column. But many of the problems for the multivariate case are absolutely the same. So I think starting from here or there. Exactly. Okay. So, okay, first example, I have a list of pairs. Stuff like min or mean, if you map the function, again, no problem. We could even, use the same semantic as select and just say that there's a true queue around that. So even the case of hash greater than 2 is just not gonna fire. If you want to generalize to multivariate, for separable conditions, you could use all true, any true. All true of that is, it holds for every element, any true for at least one element. So that's also quite simple to exemplify and with our existing stack. Now the problem here is with name methods. So name methods, they are confusing. How do you combine them? You just
How many
fail.
name
You
methods
combine.
do we have?
I mean, 3 are the most common one, which is one based on standard deviation, one based on interquartile range, and one based on mean absolute deviation.
Okay, so what does z-score actually do? If z-score was a standalone function, what would it do?
But z-score is just computing the on a single column is computing the
distribution and then computing z-scores for everything based on.
Is like the value minus the mean divided by standard deviation, absolute value.
So it's basically, I think, when you 3 standard deviations out or some other standard factor.
Exactly. So it's basically you do standardize of the column, you take absolute value and you check what's greater than 3.
We don't have a thing called z-score list, which takes a list and returns those values. I mean, just as a standalone function.
Standardize is
different from
that function.
standardize.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
like
standardized. It's not standardized. It's not standardized. Is not a list of z-scores, is it?
It's absolute. I mean, you need just to take the absolute value. Absolute value of standardized is the list of z-scores.
But also, Stephen, even if it were a function, we just said that functions are mapped, so it wouldn't work as a function.
You have to use column-wise threads.
But Giulio, okay, z-score is clearly a scalar definition. Now, there are different ways of getting multivariate definition. I think you should have something else, like ellipsoids, like the
Yeah, but Roger, one thing that is very common
if it's multivariate, it then will be multivariate.
Yeah, but Roger, one thing that is very, very common is that you have like 5 numeric columns and you want to consider any row that has at least one anomaly, like invalid, or you want to consider invalid.
Why is that common? I don't think that's common at all.
It's a common cleaning thing. You don't want to do it, it's not always useful to say this. I mean, and also the other point is that you don't want to call this function 15 times for 15 columns. So sometimes you want to map it across the columns. Sometimes you want to take the end. Sometimes you want to take the or.
I see. Well, then that's fine. But it's basically a bunch of univariate methods.
Also, this is a different function. I mean, find anomalies is just finding them and returning them, right? There's a different function, which is essentially delete anomalies. Where did we land in the end?
Handle them. I mean, handle them. Whether you delete is trim, classically named, and Windsorize is kind of map it into maybe those 3 standard deviations in. Those 3 sigmas out. I'm saying you project it into some value.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, sorry. Below I used streams for Winsorizing was my mistake, but yeah, exactly. I mean, these are typical things that you want to do.
Where did we land on what am I trying to say? On the delete missing stuff.
I think the consensus was to use discard. You propose 2 new functions. I don't remember at the end of the discussion if you were still up for proposal or not, like any missing, all missing.
Discard is implemented and documented now.
Exactly. Discard works very well. And we tried to design discard missing. It was just the same syntax as discard. So we just say, let's not do that.
Okay, so look, what the hell is the good of find anomalies typically? I mean, transform anomalies, I understand completely, but find anomalies, I don't really think. I think it's a kind of a debugging type function, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I think that there's sort of a range of things. That there's things based on statistical distribution. Things are too far out in the tail, flag it, because that's probably something went wrong. Then there's something you have pre-knowledge. I know that this quantity cannot be negative. If it's negative, it's definitely an anomaly type thing. You have some outside knowledge that says where values need to be.
Right. But I mean, okay, so look, in this thing about if you have different columns, basically, that you need to do different things with, I mean, I can imagine a syntax, which I think is not ambiguous, of saying, z-score, comma, I mean, maybe it's z-score, comma, z-score, comma, blah, 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 whatever another case is. And that means the different elements of the lists. And if it's association thing, where you could use that for named columns and so on, or named association elements.
Okay, yeah. I mean, this is verbose, but as a fallback, if you want to do what Carlo was saying, to do multiple things in the same fold.
And the other thing is that if you want kind of a z-score for everything, I don't see why we shouldn't have a different name for that case. I mean, maybe z-score, I don't know whether z-score on its own would mean that, doing the column-wise value type thing, or whether z-score on its own means something more specific, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Does that make sense?
Yeah, this was something that Carlo suggested while we were meeting today, like to have orthogonal names for stuff that is strictly multivariate.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a good idea.
So we can document that they if you just put that string, it will work multivariate. Now, transform anomalies. Yeah, here by trim I meant what Roger called winsorizing. Basically, when you fold back outliers to like within the distribution. So I mean, the main point is, however you want to call it, that this thing will return something of the same length with anomaly reduced back to non-anomalous variant. So direct column application, this will take, of course, like a where and what to do argument.
Yep.
Because you need to specify both. You floated that syntax. Tabular goes to A if you want to select a column. No, if you implement this for like, if you implement transform anomalies on a column, I'm not super excited of having transform missing work on tabular data and transform anomalies on column-wise data, but maybe there's no way around that.
Sorry, transform missing working on what?
Transform missing takes in tabular data. It can handle a column, but cannot handle like the whole tabular. And you specify what to do for each column. Here is, we didn't want the double rule on the second argument. A goes to z-score, goes to trim.
Well, I think that might be the lesser of the evils.
Yeah, but also I'm thinking of why, if we have one that finds it, why is this one also finding it?
You want to nest the function call?
Yeah.
Which one that finds it? I mean,
the previous one, find anomalies, finds them. And this
what
one,
does it do with them?
Right, this one does something to them. They transform them. In the missing case, we've already found them.
Yeah, I understand, but what does find return? What does find anomalies return for a tabular?
I think it would be useful for it to return a mask.
It has properties, but by default, the default property right now of find anomaly is the list. Exactly. So it would be like a subtabular. Yeah.
Right.
So in this case, for transform anomalies, in the first argument, we don't want tabular, but we want something like find anomalies of tabular, method, tabular, and plug the tabular.
Listen, if we want a function that returns the anomaly masked, I don't think it's the right thing. I just don't think it's the right thing. I think that unless we want something, I just don't think it's the right thing to have. We could have a separate function from find anomalies that produces an anomaly mask, or alternatively a tabular with what do they call, with an extra column with the masking information in it. But it seems like not the right factoring of things, because you can do all of that stuff. Anything you can do here, you can do with transform columns, construct columns, and so on. This is all convenience. So the issue here is just walk me through what transform missing, what its syntax is. Shall I bring it up?
Yeah, if you scroll up, or if you open the documentation pages, yeah. Yeah. Okay, so is tabular data, spec, which is mean, median, mode, which will apply to all the columns,
please get
or a
rid
list of columns.
Tables. Could we please get rid of these nonsense tables?
Just delete it if you don't like. I mean, it was a placeholder. I can also delete myself.
I
it's
don't
fine.
want to. What's that?
Okay. It is a placeholder. There's going to be uniform illustrations in every tabular page. I can remove it.
Come to the monthly documentation meeting, which there's one this afternoon.
What?
If it is in the afternoon, it's typically very late for me, so I don't think I was ever invited.
I think somebody from this team should come to it, because I want to raise this question about these tables and make sure we have a standard tooling for them. Unless you have already done that.
Yeah, I'm developing it with Tim. Those.
Okay, but have you been coordinating with Brian?
Brian? No.
Well, you need to.
What would he do?
Because they're responsible for the documentation system. And let's make sure
he can't make illustrations. I mean,
that's right. But we need to make sure that it's uniform, not just in functions that you're dealing with.
Okay, so I have not found that we can be uniform across the whole system.
I understand, but I think that you've got to give some visibility to the people who are responsible for the documentation system for the structural change that you are making.
Okay. Can we do it after the project?
This afternoon. Maybe you could come to this meeting this afternoon.
This afternoon?
Yes. So 4:30 Central.
I can't. Sorry.
Then we'll have to record it, and we'll have to make sure that you listen to it.
Okay.
Okay, so image aside, let's ignore the image for a second. So you were asking about the syntax.
I need to get this added to the agenda appropriately.
Okay. Well, I wish when they're prototypes, they're tentative or something. That's just, I usually mark them just so you don't fly off the, ringer.
Yeah, right.
And
Why
say that this is not
tentative.
Yeah, it should be tentative, and it's like usually XXX before I said this is prototype illustration, not the real thing.
Okay, Giulio, can you take care of that?
Yeah, I'm just going to remove it. I mean, this is something that I put here just to fill in. It was not designed by anybody. It's just to.
Don't need to remove it, okay? Because we still need a prototype.
Okay.
So don't.
Okay. I'll just mark it as tentative.
Thank you.
Right. I'm not going to do it because I don't want to have the whole flow of the.
Right.
Fine. No problem. I'm going to do it after this meeting.
Okay. All right.
Okay. So syntax. Here is quite easy because you already know what is missing. So it's just basically tabular, what, or tabular, list of columns, and for each column what to do.
Okay.
So we need. If we had the analog of that, if there was an argument that says what's anomalous, and then tell what to do. It's one more argument for anomalous that needs to say where.
It's not right, because here you're separately transforming multiple columns. Column A, column B, column C all have different specs.
Yeah, and you could do that for.
Yeah, I don't see any choice, given this syntax, to having transform anomalies basically look like, forget this because it's not going to work. You've got to be able to say A arrow Z score arrow trim, I think.
Well,
I think Roger was saying A goes to Z score and then comma A arrow trim. So you separately, so basically the second argument is calling like find anomalies and generating the flagging mask. And then the third argument is actually it's basically the same as transform missing.
But why?
Correct, Roger?
But
I
why do
wasn't
it that
really.
way?
I was really thinking that it would be just like a missing mask, the optional second argument, and then the third one that says what you do.
But can I just mention, if you're transforming anomalies in a tabular, either they all have to be trim or none of them have to be trim, right? Because we'll if
trim,
you trim some and
no,
not
I use trimming the wrong way here. I thought like trimming in a sense of reducing the value. This is the one that is clipping, sort of. Yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry.
So, yeah.
I got confused.
Yeah, let's call it like winterized clip, or yeah.
Okay, but so I don't understand. I thought what this means is, look at column A, based on z-score, things that are anomalous according to z-score, clip them.
Yeah, correct.
Okay. So any other syntax that I can see either has to repeat the A or make a big complicated mess of something else.
Well, you're
I'm
right.
not seeing any alternative.
Furthermore,
Yeah.
I think that clip is somewhat context dependent to the z-score.
Yes.
It is.
Yes.
Well, okay, so then the question is really what we're doing just saying z-score clip? Just have a, if there are a limited number of these things, we just do that.
Also, names that combine detection and
because I don't know whether that's what's relevant, but it seems to me that it could get very specific. Can you give me an inventory? Where do we have an inventory of what we're actually looking for there?
Well, if you open find anomalies new. But there's just, I have like 3 methods basically, univariate to detect
Find
anomalies.
anomalies new. Is that right?
Exactly.
Capital new?
It's the same. It's case
Capital new?
insensitive.
no.
It's the same. It doesn't matter. It says case insensitive.
Oh,
Okay.
I would add if you are on a
Precedent for
case insensitive type
A
system.
precedent for the combined names is for numeric array, where we have things like check, and we have clip and check, and clip and coerce.
Okay.
Yeah, but this is. I mean, the point is that I don't know. It feels like combinatorial explosion. It maybe it's not. Maybe it's not.
Well,
but
just tell me, where is the stuff? Where are the?
yeah. Where are they?
look at the possible values for method include. Yeah, there's like 3 univariate methods plus the stuff that was there before, plus the function syntax.
Okay, but what do you do with those?
You
okay,
flag
so-
examples that are non-misted and anomalous. Sorry.
No, okay, but what do you want the actions to be? Do you want them by default to all clip, or what do you want them to do?
No, I think that probably the sanest default is to send them to missing.
Okay.
I mean, the point for anomalies is that it's a lot more open than missing. There's missing. There's a small collection of methods that is like greatly the most used, and to find them is quite easy because they're already there. It's a pattern thing. Here is a lot more dependent on the semantic of your data.
I don't understand. I mean, like with z-score, I don't understand. How many sigma are you going to decide as an anomaly?
I mean, by
you have
default 3. So this is an old version. I haven't pushed actually my last one. Is similar to
how
the.
many things do we have? I mean, do we have something where we go z-score arrow 5 arrow clip?
No, I use the same. The syntax I have right now is this like list z-score, 3.
Why?
Which can be
beeping at me. Why is this failing? What is it doing?
failing to do what? Sorry.
The local kernel has quit during the course of an evaluation. Why did that happen? Look at it, just sort of spontaneously quit. Just saying, who knows what's going on there?
I don't know, but this is prototype, and the things I experimented with today were pretty unstable. So maybe.
Okay. All right. Okay. So you're saying there may need to be more detail about how are you proposing to give the
just put a list, like list z-score, 3. 3 is going to be the default, and then you can say z-score, 5, 2 to be more lenient.
Bah.
I know you don't like the list thing, but it's a very convenient way to group arguments together.
I understand. It's kind of a cesspool type approach, in my view. I mean, it doesn't,
What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, it's just we're throwing a bunch of things in there, and it's just like we're not really saying how it all relates. We're just sort of saying, hey, there's a bunch of things here, sort them out. It's okay. This is not the most. The issue here is, I mean, I would imagine that in principle we could have a function here and an action function here.
Mm-hmm.
A detection function and an action function.
Yeah. In the open case, yes.
Okay. And the default action would be make it missing.
That's very reasonable for usage in transform columns and stuff like that.
So we say missing, quotes.
Missing anomaly. I mean, in find anomalies, we return missing anomalous.
Okay. Fine. Then that's what we should do here.
Yeah, I don't see any reason to change this, honestly.
Okay.
Do we support like different flavors of missing in Tabular? I thought we were kind of colder on that.
I don't think we care. We're not doing different things with them, but I think we are able to process them, are we not?
No, I mean, I guess the question comes up, if you're multiplying a missing not available with a missing anomalous, what happens? What wins?
Well, missing not available is never going to be anomalous because it's missing already.
We decided on that, and basically, so we support the different flavors of missing, but subsequent transformations just convert them to the generic missing.
Okay.
Or missing not available, I think was what we decided was generic.
Okay.
Okay. So what do we still have to figure out here?
Well, there's the multivariate problem here, but I guess
I think we should solve it the same way as the other one. I think let's not try to look, most of the time it's like I want to do, okay, here's my point of view. Most of the time, if you're going to use, transform anomalies, it's for a quick, just get rid of the anomalies. If it's like, oh, if this thing is an elephant, then it might not have the type of bird might not be the same as if it's a bird in the tree, blah, 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 blah. By the time it's that complicated piece of logic, you're, you shouldn't be using transform anomalies. Transform anomalies is a quick kind of just, hey, get rid of the anomalies. If you want to have a very complicated logic about the anomalies, then just do, generic functions and logic and so on things.
I completely agree. And it's the same logic we had with transform missing. You can fall back on transform columns.
But I have a counter example of this. Like today while we were trying to design this, writing the multidimensional version of Z-score with the inverse of the covariance matrix and then the norm of the vector and so on, it's it's gonna look pretty ugly in transform columns.
Good.
It's not something that you figure out.
That's why you're writing a version of it that's just one word.
Yeah, exactly. But then you have to figure out the multivariate case.
Sure.
Yeah.
But if you use a different name,
just
call it multivariate Z-score, then we can.
What I'm saying is that by the time you want a variant of that, you're going to have to write out all the code. If it's the dead standard, use, subtract the mean, divide by the standard deviation or whatever it is, people know how to do that. If it's subtract, the kurtosis from the this, from the that, and do this, you're going to have to write code.
Oh, sure, absolutely. But my point was just that we have to figure out one complicated thing, which is the multivariate syntax.
Okay.
Or like selecting
What's the
multiple
syntax
columns.
issue? The multiple
the-
columns.
No, it's not. I don't think there's a syntax issue for
Once you just give list of A, comma B goes to Z-score.
I would think so.
Just like we do in transform columns.
Not to Z-score. Because if you say it goes to Z-score, that means something like perform Z-score on these columns.
Right, so it isn't Z-score.
Yeah, it's going to be multivariate Z-score or something
multivariate
like
just
that.
Z-score,
Exactly.
whatever. Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
What is the right
I
name
think,
for multivariate Z-score?
Goja, do you have an idea?
What is it called? What is Z-score called for a multivariate?
I'm not even sure it exists. So
I mean, you just standardize the multivariate data, I suppose. I don't think you need to call it multivariate. Just
No, but we don't want to do that. We just said we can't use Z-score on its own because Z-score on its own does it per column.
Well, then multivariate Z-score as a string can work.
Yeah.
Or what the word not common but joint Z-score.
That's not terrible. I mean, that might have that might make it clear that it's I think if you saw something like A, B goes to joint Z-score, that would be quite
this
reasonable.
also highlights that we are actually considering them together, not separately.
Mm-hmm.
Right, which wouldn't be so clear with multivariate, I think.
Yeah.
Doesn't joint, I mean, shouldn't we maybe use joint for the case where we consider it strictly a multiplication of the two univariate and multivariate for the case where you can actually use an ellipsoid? I'm like bringing out of my league here.
I don't know, can Gosha comment on that?
Well, but the point is that if you use the joint Z-score, you want to look at the covariance matrix between the two, right? And you're going to use that. Otherwise, you're just going to assume they are independent and you're going to do the Z-score on each column separately. Right?
Yeah, but the independent one is surely just Z-score here.
Exactly. So that's why I'm saying that's a joint Z-score, just as we use
notion
of joint probability or joint PDF or joint distribution for multivariate, case of variables.
Okay, but
so that way joint
some definitional issue with ellipsoids and things, which I don't think is relevant. But I think that joint Z-score means take the ellipsoid version. I mean, take the
okay,
go
makes
ahead.
sense. Okay, fine. Fine with that. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Can we move on.
One final thing that came out as a kind of spin-off from this, which might or not be relevant, but it's very quick. I mean, the topic is very broad, but the point is very quick, is that we don't, in general, have a clear syntax to distinguish between list of tuples and tuple of lists. So one case, and I don't know, Roger, if this was already solved, then forgive me, please. Like, we have the syntax tabular, and you extract the two columns, and with this syntax here, it basically means a list of tuples. Yeah, you want to consider a list of pairs from A and B.
Yeah.
Now, what if you want to plot multiple sets? Like what I had before, tabular all A, tabular all B. Is it something that because in general, this is also came out with multivariate versus single variate. You might want to consider columns independently, or you might want to consider them grouped in tuples. Do we care about this distinction?
Yeah, and if you go look at list plot, you'll see that's how it's documented there.
Right.
Oh, is there a possibility to do that with tabular? Okay, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, maybe I had no documentation. Sorry, then end
keep going.
Oh no, wait, there is another thing. Sorry, like with transform anomalies, do we allow for do this thing, the anomaly mask or whatever you're doing, the send to missing, clip, etc. But instead of overwriting the existing column, write it to a new column named this?
No,
it's impossible.
Again, I mean, if we go down every path, the syntax we'll have here is unbelievably complicated. Nobody will ever understand it.
Exactly.
I think most of the time, if you want to transform anomalies, you mean zap those minus 99s and turn them into zeros or something.
But okay.
Okay. And a lot of the times you'll just be, let's say if every missing data is minus 99, you'll probably just want to say transform columns minus 99 arrow missing. Make sense?
Yeah.
Let's not chase weirdo syntaxes. They're things that people just want to do as a kind of like, oh, I want to Windsorize my, whatever. Just boom, they do it.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Ready to move on?
Yes.
Okay. Out of core. No ferrite is being harmed in this process.
Too many physicists.
Well, or too many old people.
Yeah.
Okay. What are we seeing here?
So yeah, I mean, now Rob has provided me with a number of things to change the boxes, to implement everything. So basically now if you open up the flipper there, this is what an out-of-core tabular looks like. No, that's relational database object below the one with head tabular. So it has the backend, the column count, the name of the columns. If one is a key column, then yeah, that's the unwashed stuff you don't want to see from the SQL zoo.
Okay.
So you can tell
a couple
what's
of
in there.
suggestions here.
Sure.
I think this should be grayed down. Why is that one boldface?
Because it's a key column.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say that. I kind of think a dingbat would be better than bolding.
What dingbat?
I don't know. A key. How about a key as a dingbat?
I'm afraid it's going to be too small at that font, but okay,
I know. I know. Why are we explicitly saying the word columns here? Given that we just said column. I mean, I'm just talking about formatting here.
I mean, those things have to have a header of some sort, if I understand correctly. I don't know if
that's just because of the way that those boxes.
I also don't particularly like that it's center aligned rather than top aligned, but
yeah, well, so complain. I mean, Itai is not here. Is Itai the keeper
Itai
of
is
boxes?
here. Itai is here but muted.
That's unusual. Itai with us. He zoned out.
Well, anyway.
It became an anomaly.
Okay, so you want the string to be grayed out, and then okay.
I think the word string should be grayed out, and I'm not even sure that we shouldn't put it in parens after these names. Grayed out in parens, because I just don't think it's as.
So not a grid, just parens.
I don't think so. I mean, I don't know what other people think, but I don't think. Well, I don't know. I guess I can see arguments where you want to read down the list of types.
Yeah, I think having them aligned is nice.
Okay. How complicated can those type specifications get?
No more than that. Like we don't have integer 64. We hide that from you really, because otherwise it gets too much of a zoo with different vendors. So
and are we sure we don't want to do those things as like icons of the same kind that we have in the actual? And by the way, these icons have not been fixed, which kind of annoys me. Right? We went through that like a month ago, right?
We had a meeting with Jeremy and Tim and Jason, and we got another revision that I expected it to be I think it has been showcased.
Well, I don't remember seeing it. But if we've got reasonable icons here, why not use those icons here? Maybe even on the left. Right? And then we can also have, for example,
Steven, like if there is room for text, I think it's better than having to parse an icon. Like
maybe
I understand.
I don't think these icons are that important. I mean, most of the time you don't even care what the type is.
I strongly disagree here, because in the case of this, it's more opaque and it's more strongly typed. So you can't add the number to a
My
string
suggestion would be
loudly. So
by both graphically and otherwise, that here's a way we could do it. Down the left-hand column, we have the icons, okay? Key columns have their icons bolded. See what I'm saying?
yeah, but we have the room for text. To me, it feels like
Doesn't mean we should use it. Especially since we only have 3 or 4 cases.
Yeah, but the thing is that unlike the rest of Mathematica, sorry, Wolfram language, when you're running this on a SQL database and you have a typing mismatch, it's gonna fail loudly. And so this is like an important piece of information as you're typing.
It's already failed long ago. By the time you get to this point, it didn't fail.
No, because like, for example, the Office code looks like numbers. And you're like, oh, okay, I'm gonna add 1 to them. And then, oh no, they're strings. Like,
I don't know. I don't have what do other people think? What does Christopher think, for example?
I don't really have a very strong opinion.
Anybody else have a strong opinion? Roger?
I like them being written out and explicit. Knowing what the types are is often important to me.
Well, given your particular job, I'm not surprised.
Yeah, fair enough.
I kind of I like seeing the types too, but that's because I work with types all the time. So
isn't this like one of those basic rules of UX? Like if you have the room, like wasn't Apple slammed a number of times for removing writings under icons, or Microsoft rather than Apple? And that it's all icons, you have no text where there would be space, and then it's incomprehensible after when there are too many.
I don't have.
I mean, one question is when would you be trained on what the icons mean if it's never shown icon with text next to it?
Well, by seeing, yeah, it is a good point. All right, fine, let's have text. Write it down, but let's have text. And now in terms of the key column, I would put like a dot before it. Centered dot before it.
Okay.
Okay.
But I think that for the entity store we used bold, but okay.
Really?
Yeah, well, I can change that too if you want. For its canonical name there, but that's
a little different.
Maybe it's underlined. I don't remember. Let me check.
That's a little different though. Canonical name is a little different from key column. Has very different functionality. I mean, canonical name is this is the thing you should pay attention to, whereas key column is much more of a in the weeds operational thing.
No. Canonical name should be opaque. It's not something you should pay attention to, because it's like it's up.
Okay, we'll find out how it works there.
Yeah.
Okay, what else do we have to do here?
Oh, okay. There are a couple of open questions that we left off last time we talked about this.
Yes.
Two tabular, two in memory is obscure. It should be a single function, I think. We need to name it.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. I think that function should be the same as the function that brings like a video in core.
We can't. We don't bring video in core.
Not yet. If it's small enough, we could do that. Right? Audio, we can bring it. Can we bring audio in core?
Yeah, audio we have
Yes,
both.
we do that, but only for audio, not video.
What's it called?
It's called normal.
What's that?
Normal. Normal of out-of-core audio gives you in-core audio.
That's a bit overloaded.
Well,
yeah, and also there's the problem that normal is usually idempotent, right?
Yeah, I don't think it's really the right name for audio. I think that was a sloppy piece of design, which I might have been responsible for. I think we need a function that brings things in core. Let's think about what else we might bring in core. Okay, so what we have right now is local cache, which does not bring things in core. I mean, I could imagine, somewhat fictionally perhaps, I mean, don't we have, I mean, we haven't used these. Do we have in-core streams?
But what do you mean by streams?
You mean list? Is in
No,
course.
no, no,
You
no.
mean like
File
string to
operator.
stream?
Yeah,
Stream
like string to
pointer?
stream. Yes. Is that an in-core stream, or is that it must be an in-core stream. It's not a thing.
I don't know what you mean by in-core stream.
I
I
mean,
mean, string to stream, I think, doesn't reference any file, right?
okay, then it's an in-core. Because what I mean is, look, if you have a gigabyte file and you're doing seeks in the file, okay, that's an out-of-core stream. It has a stream pointer, and the stream pointer refers to something that is out of core. So that's another case where if we have a mechanism, not that we use this very much, where we're bringing the stream into memory, which is relevant if we're seeking around in it all over the place and you don't want to be, doing that in a file system.
Well, that's like read or binary read.
Binary read operates on the file system. Yeah. Binary read operating on an in-core stream is what I'm talking about. And that is a thing, right? Sean, that's a thing.
Yes.
Okay. Do we use it often?
But I mean, internally.
Okay. So, I mean, that would be an example. This function that brings a thing in core, one could imagine it taking a file and making it, or a stream for that matter, where we've said open read and it returns a stream. We could imagine incorifying that.
Well, actually, import already does that. Import does work on input stream.
No, I understand that, but I'm saying identically bring it.
Yeah.
So
maybe it should be import.
No, it isn't.
For a second,
brings it in some format.
Exactly. That's what I was just going to say.
What I'm suggesting is whatever this incorify, whatever we call it, that what it does is, I mean, this is
so when I'm working on a file or something, it's like read byte array or read string brings the whole file into a string or byte array. That's how I bring something into memory.
Yep. But what I'm saying is if you have a thing where you say open read,
there's a developer version of this thing that's like string from string. There's some internal stuff that we do to do that, but it's not designer exposed at all.
Okay. So what I'm saying is I'm just trying to get a sense as we try to design this incorify function, whatever it's going to be called. I just want to get a sense of where else it might be used. So that's an example. You've done an open read, and it is what is a temporary file, right? All right, temporary directory. How do I get a temporary file?
$, temporary directory.
But how do I just open a temporary file?
Open temporary.
That's what I thought, and I didn't seem to know about that. Oh, it did. I'm confused. Wait a minute. I'm going crazy. Look at that. I'm not going crazy. Where's the autocomplete? Am I going crazy? Hello, everybody.
It's deprecated in the docs. It says you should use open write. Open write, open close does what open temporary used to do.
As of version 6.
Okay, that's what I'm talking about there. Okay, and I'm saying to incorify that.
That's an output stream.
Yeah.
Well, okay, fine.
Which is why there's like a string from stream thing.
I don't think like when you keep talking about incorifying strings. I think I'm not sure how well formed this is from like what streams
I mean, I'm just going to get a scope of what you could incorify, and this is one other thing. What else can you imagine? A database. Is that a thing you could imagine?
You could take a database backed entity store and turn it into an in-memory entity store. Probably blow up your system, but you can try.
No, maybe. I mean, it depends on what you're doing, right?
Yeah. If you want.
Okay, so let's make a list of some of these things. Okay, so we've got entity stores. We've got audio. We've got video. What about a search index or a vector database? Does that make sense, guys?
Data connection object, something that's pointing to like an
Yeah.
S3 file or something.
To which?
Some remote resource. Data connection object.
Wait, is that like if it's an S3, you're gonna make a local copy, or you're just gonna bring the whole S3 bucket in memory?
That can be a bit of an implementation detail, but if you have some S3 file that you're pointing to, a specific object, you want to bring it into memory.
Yeah. I mean, the whole point here is if you've got a terabyte of memory on your computer and you know you're going to be operating on this thing, you might as well bring it into memory. So what it probably should be called, since we call memory, we have the notion of memory in use, memory available, all that kind of thing. I think the key word that we want to use is memory, right? So to memory of expa. Now, what's it going to return? It's normally going to return something which looks the same as it did before. Is that true? I mean, yeah, you understand what I'm saying? I mean, this to memory of an out-of-core tabular will just return a thing that says tabular, right? Which now happens to be an in-core tabular. Am I right? Can somebody say, please? Okay, is anybody there?
I think so, but I'm thinking hard.
Okay, all right, fine.
I mean, that's exactly what to tabular, to in memory did down there, right? So.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Carlo is
I thought-
suggesting we could call it
Well-
Wolfram. Very funny.
So for the two, I remember we talked for a long time about how to bring tabulars into memory, and I thought that we made a new function because there was a discussion about it could be to tabular, and it could also be from tabular that brings it into, you know.
I know.
But those
right.
are, yeah. To tabular is basically a converter from other expressions where you can control how you make that conversion. From tabular is a converter from tabular to other expressions where you can control how you make that conversion.
Why can't
Right,
it just
but
be
if you're
two
going from a-
tabular? If it's an out-of-core tabular, why isn't it just two tabular with one argument?
That was suggested. That like we had a long discussion about this at some point,
But,
and that was suggested. But one of the questions was it could just as well be from tabular because there's a tabular
Yeah.
on both ends,
Yeah.
right? Because
But the other thing is that there might be a day where, you know, we want to take an in-core arrow compatible tabular into an out-of-core parquet tabular or SQLite. And so it would maybe one day we'll have the opposite thing. So to call it just two tabular with zero arguments will just
yeah, I don't.
No, that's a great
Never
point.
doing
We really need to have a name for something that's in core and out of core. Both of them need to be explicitly named, I think.
Right. Well, you could do that with two tabular, and then, you know, look, if it's two tabular and it's going into something in memory, what are the typical second arguments to two tabular? They're not where it's coming from, right? They're where it's something about where it's going to. Is that right, or am I confused?
No, two tabular is where it's coming from. Like two tabular, comma, columns means you're specifying an association of columns. Or say time series means you're specifying a time series.
Yeah, this is also why it doesn't really fit here, because like in general, both from tabular and to tabular specify the thing which is not tabular. The tabular is like.
All right, so I am proposing to memory.
Yeah.
And this thing that you're talking about moving something from memory to an external environment, sounds to me like an export.
Yeah, it probably is, like, given the number of different parameters you can have. Yeah.
All right. So to memory then is essentially an optimization. Now, okay, let me understand this. What is the entity prefetch, right? Is a very analogous thing.
But I don't think it goes to memory.
No, it doesn't go to memory.
Yeah.
Doesn't go to memory. Although one could use to memory on an entity type.
Not
think would be interesting.
I think you can use it on an entity store. Not
Yeah,
sure.
okay, but I mean, you could use it on a built-in entity type if you wanted to cache a bunch of things in memory.
You'd have to ask Tony if that's possible.
Well, it may not be possible now, but it's certainly something we can imagine. I'm just trying to understand what to memory could possibly do. And it seems to me like it's a fairly generally useful function. But that normally what to memory would do is do a bunch of, routing around, but then it will return, like local cache, for example, or like once, all of those functions do something, but then they return the thing. They return a thing that symbolically looks like the thing you started from. Am I making sense?
Yeah, I think that what we're dealing with is like a reference to something else that's not already in memory. But
I understand.
key
The thing
there
that
being a
goes in-
reference.
Look, here's the confusing thing, okay? You have a not in memory tabular. It will look fairly similar to just a generic tabular. It might have different iconography and things, but it basically looks like a tabular, okay? Then you say to memory, and what do you get back? You get another thing that looks like a tabular, and that has, if you were to look at it, it would have the same data as the thing you started from. It is an equivalent expression to the thing you started from.
I mean,
but more efficient because it's in memory.
I mean, maybe this is temporary, but right now, those outer core ones come with a summary box, and then they do not look like tabular.
I know, but they look somewhat similar to tabular. I mean, I don't know how similar they look, but it's fine. I mean, if we say to memory and it comes back and it's a tabular, and the thing that it was before was an out of core tabular, everybody's happy. I'm just trying to clarify what to memory returns. It returns an object which is functionally equivalent to what it started from, but just more efficient because it's in memory. Do we agree?
I don't agree. It's necessarily more efficient, but
yeah. Okay. It's in memory, and but it's the same thing. Like you can do an operation, you can count the number of rows, all that kind of thing. The operations that would worked on it before will work on it again.
Yep.
And that should be true of the other examples of to memory, which, I mean, we should probably talk about this in LCC with a different set of people for some of these other things. But I think entity store would be a very obvious one. I mean, this doesn't all have to be supported on day one. Make sense, everybody?
Yep.
Any objections? And I like the fact that you can say to memory, you basically say memory available, blah, blah, blah. The only thing I can imagine that we may or may not be able to do is a to memory pre-flight. Do you understand what I'm saying?
How big will it be
Yeah.
once I put it in memory? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we could have a limit above which it would somehow give a failure.
Well, I mean, if it's bigger than memory available, it should give a failure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't know.
Preemptively.
I don't know if I can do that.
I mean, there could be an option that it controls a limit, the fraction of memory available that you can consume. Like if you go,
No, but I'm more worried about like. I mean,
whether you can tell before you do it.
No, yeah, like performing a query that says, okay, let's give me a rough estimate of how big this database is. First of all, like you're forcing it to do 2 round trips to a database. Secondly, if it's something that has like 15 columns and you have to check all the types and then check the length of the thing, that
Can I make a comment here? It's kind of obvious.
Yeah.
If it's gonna live in memory, you better be able to do those things. If you can't do those things in reasonable time, it's going to blow up your memory.
Not true. Because let me give you an example. You have like a super complex query that ends up returning 1 row with 3 columns. Okay. It just takes a long time to compute it and figure out that it's going to return 1 row with 3 columns.
Okay, let's just comment on what we're looking at here. Okay. Somebody has a database. They wonder, is it plausible for me to bring this into memory? Is it 100 megabytes or is it 100 petabytes? Okay.
Yeah, but Stephen, again, you're thinking about like what I'm saying. Imagine you have a situation where you have like a database that is tens of terabytes, and then you're filtering for a very, very rare case that will return 3 rows. But in order to figure out if there are 3 rows, you have to run through every single case, and it takes 5 minutes to process.
I understand.
You have to perform a select.
So okay, but I'd like to know, if I gulped the whole database, how big would it be? Now, maybe there's a way to get that from the relational database function.
No, but that's something you can reasonably tell. But most of the time, what you're going to do is
I don't care. I'm asking. Here's the point. Okay. If you say, how big would it be if I gulped the whole thing? And the answer is 10 megabytes, then whatever you do is going to be safe.
Yes.
If you say, if I gulp the whole thing, how big would it be? And it says it will be an exabyte, then you have to worry about it. Right? So being able to quickly check roughly how big will it be is useful. Now, if that's something that we could provide in the summary box for the relational database, that would be okay. I mean, there's a certain byte countery.
Stephen, I think that the answer to this question is, in general, if it's SQLite, it sits on your hard drive, you can tell, and it's probably fine. If it's sitting on some remote server and it's Postgres, then most likely it isn't. But
okay,
not
that's your
necessarily because it could be the network latency that makes it slow. You don't know.
The point is, you might not know until you actually execute it. So you might as well execute it with a threshold where it fails past that threshold, and then see how big it was.
Well, see how big you got to before it failed.
Sure.
Okay, because here's what I think is actually a pretty common case. Somebody has had a database lying around for 30 years. It's a database of turtles caught in the wild. I'm told ducks are a better animal to use, but anyway, and at the time when it was collected, that was a big database. But now it's turtle. It's tiny. But you just don't know. I mean, people. You just don't have any idea, and being able to quickly check that will be very useful, rather than doing a thing that most people will be extremely reluctant to do, which is to say, just try and gulp this. You may turn out you're eating something that's 75 times your size.
Steven, I think that the proper solution for this, which also prevents you from like doing like the operation multiple times, is to have support in external object or some such to cursors. So we can settle.
We don't have to have that fancier thing. We're just trying to answer the question. This database that somebody handed me from whenever, or somebody is pointing me to, how big is it roughly? If it's a file, then obviously I could in principle go look at the file size. But I'm talking about users who do not understand, is it a file? Is it a remote thing on a server? What the heck is it? Is it from 50 years ago and it's tiny and whatever? It's like, couldn't we just have a function that just tells you the answer to this?
I'm not even sure that like all sets of permission lets you see it, but I can check. I can see what I can do.
Okay, but let's just think how we would design it if we could have this. Okay. Would we simply put it in the relational database box, or would we have a separate function like byte count that tries to figure it out? And by the way, one of these years or decades, we need to make byte count more sophisticated and deal with external objects and all that kind of thing more effectively. I mean, it's not really been important or not really come up, but this is a case where as soon as we have outer core things, if you say byte count of some video, what's it going to do? Am I making sense? Do you understand what I'm saying? Somebody, please.
I think it gives you the byte count of the expression, which is very small.
That's what I think too. But the fact is, it's not necessarily what you want. Right? Am I making sense?
Yeah, that simpler case, the databases, you have a file most of the time.
I know you have a file, but I'm saying,
Take a look at the documentation for byte count, though. It does say rather specifically that it's what's in memory in the system, and it is the memory of the expression.
Oh, I understand. I understand. Byte count with
But
one
I see what
argument
you're
absolutely
saying,
does.
that that's not what you actually wanted. What you did want was the size of the video.
Right. I mean, it may not be the, it would either be byte count with another argument or an option, or, I can see that you want these remote byte counts in certain cases. And that's the same thing we're asking for in all of these cases. Now notice that if I say file blah, 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 where did I put that?
I mean, there's something else to be aware of. Like audio, and the same for video, they are stored in compressed formats that are really optimized for playing, but not processing. When we're in memory, we don't store them in those compressed formats. They are in a format that's optimized for processing.
Right. So there's
and kind of similar on the database size. Like you don't know the size of the query is going to be proportional to the size of the database. Like they probably are, but not necessarily.
Right.
Yeah, one way to think about it is really like whenever you have a query, it's more of a computation than an import. So you could have a query that returns a really large thing from a database that is zero sized by doing like recursive stuff. It's Turing complete, really. So,
or this is a joke, but just one cross join.
Yeah.
All right. We should probably wrap up here. I mean, I don't think this is a critical issue.
There are a couple of open questions. If
yes.
I mean, if we want to use the full extent of the meeting,
I'd love to not do that, but
okay,
fine. I mean, we don't need to use time that we don't need to use. But if there's something that is holding anything up, then we could talk about it. I mean,
there are a couple of more questions, like in terms of like if you remember chaining.
But I'm sorry. I'm going to bring something else in.
Sure.
We probably need a parameter for now. Max. I don't know. I don't know what the name of the parameter is, but something like that, and a corresponding option. Did you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, that makes sense, and also maybe a time constraint type thing.
Yeah, it's a good idea too. Now, actually, also we need to make this work with memory constrained. Right? I mean, that would be another way to do it, but I would consider that less reliable. Do we have any other max memory conditions like that? Do you understand what I'm asking? Anybody?
Yeah, we've tried, but they're inconsistent in some sense because of the way different platforms.
What have we done? What have we done this with?
I've tried to do something for sparse array, but that's not even documented.
So when we go to dense,
right. So when you go to dense, it
so you don't convert a million by million matrix.
Right, but the default for that is infinity, so it's not really used.
But what is the option?
It's $1 something, and I don't honestly remember what it was. Let me see.
But is it not documented?
Yeah.
It's not documented, is that correct?
It's not documented, that's right.
Well,
okay, it's sparse array backtick $sparse array normal limit.
Actually, when referring to memory, we usually use size limit, summary box data size limit, output size limit.
I see. So if we called it 2 memory size limit, and then $2 memory size limit. Or just size limit. And then we could use that same option, dollar size limit, we could use that same option in sparse array. Or we could call it memory limit, which might be better.
Well, it might actually be a good option to normal.
Exactly.
Rather than
Yeah,
sparse
that's a good
array.
idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why not? Memory limit, dollar memory limit. For places where you blow memory up. And you know, it can default to infinity if we're worried about it. I like this. So then 2 memory has a memory limit option. Seems to make sense to me. Roger, anybody else?
So wait, I'm a little confused as to what are you thinking of, just memory, dollar memory limit, or both size limit and memory limit?
No. I'm just, those are alternative names. I'm abandoning.
Oh, okay, fine. Sorry, I got a little bit twisted up there, but
yeah, that's what I'm suggesting. I'm suggesting that the function is 2 memory, and that 2 memory has a memory limit, but memory limit also occurs in the only thing that I wonder about is whether we should call this something like expression memory limit or byte count limit. Because I could imagine wanting to stop the system if memory available goes below something, for instance. Am I making sense? Other people want to comment? Christopher, Roger, anybody, Jose, anybody want to comment on this name?
I think if we introduce it as experimental, I think it's pretty harmless at this point.
Do you see an objection? The question is whether we differentiate. This is the memory limit for an expression versus memory limit for memory used. We could probably have something based on that if we're really going to go, because I think it's a much more undefined thing.
Yeah, I think memory limit seems fine because we've got, memory in use, max memory used, and those are all referring to byte count, basically.
No, I'm not worried about it referring to byte count. What I'm concerned about is memory limit refers to a single expression that you're gulping into memory.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas memory used refers to the system's total memory usage. So the question that I'm raising,
but we have memory constrained, which refers to the memory of that computation.
That point, that I think wins the case.
Yeah.
All right, I'm good with memory limit.
Yeah, and that could be an option to normal too. You're
exactly. That's what we just said.
Yeah.
Yes.
Lovely. Okay.
And what other function, whatever other functions, puff memory out. Normal, I think, is the number one. And then for audio, we would start supporting 2 memory, and we would deprecate normal of audio probably. Am I making sense? Sean, makes sense?
Yeah, there is a note in the ref page, so you would have to change that.
Yeah, okay. Okay, anything else, guys? Okay, great. We're making progress. Thanks a lot, everybody. See y'all later.
Thanks, bye.